Hey, everybody. Welcome to the fourth and the last week of our web series, giving you 4 strategies to thrive on your next tour. Our first 2 weeks, we talked about personal development and some ways that thinking differently is going to help you succeed in your next role from the very first day. And then last week and this week, we're focusing more on the hard skills and the things you can do in your job that are going to make you better, make you a better tour manager, make you a better crew member. In today's session, it is extremely important because anytime there's a live performance where you're hired to work, it means there's going to be people present. And part of your role as a leader on the road is you have to make a plan to make sure that your team and your artists and everyone around is doing their job safely. Not to mention that anytime you're doing something that isn't safe, well, that can bring harm to hundreds or thousands of people that are in the audience or the crowd of the show. Today, we're going to be talking about 2 things: managing COVID, keeping your team safe on the road. And then we're going to open up the webinar to questions you may have. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions. So feel free at any time during this to add a question in the chat. Jesse, who is my partner, he will be fielding questions in the chat, and then we'll be answering those questions at the very end. Joining us today will be Jim Digby. Jim is an industry veteran who has spent over 3 decades, actually longer than I've been alive. He's been helping artists tour all over the world. You know, he's worked on and directed tours for some of the biggest artists, including Linkin Park, Enrique Iglesias, Backstreet Boys, Marilyn Manson, Phil Collins, Bon Jovi. And during his first professional tour, Jim had a wild defining moment that led him to become passionate about event safety. He eventually created the Event Safety Alliance, an organization that helps professionals be empowered, safe, and aware of foreseeable risks around them. He also recently co-founded Showmakers. This is a really cool organization. We'll talk a little bit about this at the end. It's a nonprofit designed to educate, develop, and strengthen the live event community beyond just the safety protocols. We're going to talk about all of that in just a few minutes and how those organizations can help you. But I want to go ahead and jump into the conversation. Jim, go ahead and feel free to unmute. Hey, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Riley, thank you. Did I unmute my camera too early?
No, you're great. You're great. No, I think,
see you, man.
Yeah, you too. You know, Jim, you have worked with rock stars and pop stars all over the world, and that seems like a ton of fun. If we say the word event safety, doesn't seem as fun as like rock and roll, but kind of what made you super passionate about event safety?
Riley, is it possible that event safety is the least sexy subject of all of the entertainment business? I'm not sure why I chose that as a thing to get behind, but or whether it chose me, but you're right. It's the least sexy subject for sure. It's a good question. What's the origin story around safety for me? I personally got into the live entertainment, theater, television space as a young person at 10 years old in 5th grade, when my 5th grade teacher asked me to be the master of ceremonies for the May Day parade. District that had arts and entertainment well funded. We had all kinds of access to tools and theaters and television studios. So I survived on those things. College and we tried on college. College didn't fit after a year. So much to my dad's chagrin. So I entered the electronics trade school, and that really fit. So I was really immersed in electronics and mechanical actuators and things of that nature at that time. And my mom found this ad for a nightclub dinner theater that was under construction near our home and said I should go apply. And she was right. I went to apply. So this place at the time in 1983 was a functioning dinner theater. It was a new construction project. The dinner theater had been completed first. And the premise was, after the dinner theater was over, a big, Broadway-esque, Vegas-esque type review show was finished. Then it turned into a nightclub with these hydraulic speakers that came out of the floor, lighting towers from the ceiling. And it was 1983. There was a 22-foot diameter spaceship that tracked out from the back and delivered a 6-foot tall robot to the dance floor that the girls at that time could get on and dance with. And this robot was the personality of the nightclub. We weren't ready to open, and the contractors were rushing to open. So on the grand opening night of this nightclub, which was a press opening, sold out capacity of 2,500 people. The big moment came for the big reveal of the spaceship to come out and deliver the robot to the floor. And there were some other tracking special effects that flanked the spaceship, kind of like shuttlecraft. And I was at this big reveal moment, I heard a scream, turned to look, and one of these 800-pound lighting fixtures had left the track 8 feet from where I was standing,
Mm.
came down, gone through the skull of a girl there, and killed her instantly. And I was controlling the lighting fixture. Well,
How old are you at this point?
I was 19. I was
19.
19. And the end result of the story around that, beyond the obvious impact to the girl and her family, was that the contractors had not completed the installation. They had not put the safety mechanisms in yet. We were so rushed to get open. The contractors put a C-clamp at the end of a track, which was meant to have a welded steel stop and a bunch of micro switches to turn off the motor. Boof, hit the C-clamp right off the end, right down through her skull. Well, in the wake of that, obviously, there's a great deal of trauma. There's a great deal of scar tissue. And there was also the return to work that had to happen. And in returning to work, we enacted a great many safety measures, every night safety inspections of every motor, of every winch, of every safety cable, turnbuckles, and shackles, everything was inspected. So this became part of my DNA at 19, preceded by this awful tragedy. So that laid in this foundational scar tissue as I went through my professional career. I left this nightclub after a few years, and I went to work for Disney. Disney has this tremendous program to onboard every employee and teaches the Disney culture, the Disney way, and safety is a big deal. And I had come into Disney as a pyrotechnician and a laser technician at Illuminations. So safety was embedded in everything there. I went to film school while I was at Disney. Safety was embedded in everything there. So there was this constant repetitive call to action with respect to safety and everything that I was doing.
And you found that, did you find that, you had a lot of safety training in these other fields, but it just did not equate to what you were doing and what tours were doing on the road?
So there wasn't any safety training, as you know, and as has been said. Our industry currently calls for no professional designations. You can be me or you can be you and have a field of 100,000 audience members out there, and all you've got to hang your hat on is on-the-job training. There's no rigging safety for leaders. There's no pyrotechnical safety for leaders. Sure, the vendors have those things covered, but we who lead, we know less than those who are delivering those parts, those elements. So when Indiana State Fair stage collapse happened and 7 people died needlessly, it tore open all of that scar tissue in me. And I first went on this quest to go, oh my gosh, that could have been me. What went wrong? What caused that outcome? I was a new father, and I had all this kind of suddenly, this kind of, oh my God, that's our industry. Those are our people. Those are our friends. This happened to them. That audience showed up at that show with this expectation of safety, and we let them down collectively. I wasn't at that show, but our industry, we collectively let them down. We can't do that anymore. So first I went on this quest to find some safety training. What don't I know that I should know as a leader in this space? And then as I went through these different non-associated trainings, they were parallel to our industry, but not related to our industry. I was having these aha moments. My God, why do I not see more people like me in this training? Why are we not teaching these things to our leaders? At the same time, there was a conversation that I was fortunate enough to be a part of that was started as 2, and then it was 4, and then it was 8, and then it was 20 industry leaders having a conversation about, man, we got to do something. We can't let Indiana happen again. And oh my God, look at what the governor's getting ready to do in Indiana that's going to cripple the industry. So those conversations and these learnings led to the formation of the Event Safety Alliance. I mean, there's a whole bunch in between there, but for our purposes today, it was it was co-founded. I've helped to co-found it, but the scar tissue for me was the impetus, right? That oh my God, I can't be this close again. So now there are learnings available, and that's where we are today, thanks to what we've been able to do with the ESA, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen your website is full of information. I mean, if you haven't been to the Event Safety Alliance website and you work in touring, it would benefit you to go. I did not know about the Event Safety Alliance for a long time ago. Oh yeah, you have a book. You can
Yeah.
buy it on
So
Amazon.
before the ESA existed, there were no written guidelines for our industry with, no cohesive collection of guidelines for our industry. Yes, we needed to follow the building codes. Yes, we needed to follow the fire codes, but nothing written to event professionals that addressed risk for event professionals. Now there is, thankfully. Um, and that's available for free as a download too from the website, or you can have the covered book as well.
Yeah, we're gonna send a link out in the replay email that we'll send out tomorrow with that link. But I want to talk about the risk that we're mitigating, in the live show aspect in just a few minutes. But first of all, I want to jump into the thing that's on top of all of our minds is how do we go back on the road with this pandemic, with COVID existent? I know you guys have started to put some procedures in place. You've started to kind of advise people on who are touring. What are some of those precautions? How should we be aware, and how do we move forward?
Well, that's a big loaded question, Riley, for sure. Listen. So the Event Safety Alliance, recognizing where we were back in May of last year, felt preemptively that we should release some guidance because we were seeing people talking in May about going back to work. And while we didn't think that was a good idea, we felt the next best idea was to at least put some framework around how you should go back to work at this time so that you don't do more harm to the industry or create a super spreader event, et cetera. And Steve Edelman, our vice president, and Jacob Warwick collected a group of 300 smart people and started to peck away at our 30 plus page reopening guide, also available for free. And it's rooted basically in what the CDC science says and what the WHO science says. But again, it's written music. We'll give this guidance for your event, whether it's a wedding or a live music conference or concert. And then we revisited it again in November and updated some of the details. Principally, it was the surface contamination, which was the science had proven that it was less of a threat than it was originally. Now maybe there's some more new science coming. So that guidance, along with the CDC's large event reopening guidance, are basic frameworks for how we get from where we are today to reopening. We're still scientifically in a bit of a bad place. There's news today and yesterday that there are new super outbreaks going on, that this rush to get places reopened may not have been the smartest thing to do. And while we can do events on a smaller scaled back version, the idea of doing pens and drive-ins, et cetera, we can't get to the same economic model that we were in pre-COVID at this point. So our goal at this juncture is to talk about the things that we should be doing when we do go back to
Mm-hmm.
work until we can really get an all clear. And they're rooted in the same things: wear your mask, wash your hands, physically distance. All of those three principles are still the main principles today. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you're not saying that we can't go back to work currently. You're not saying we can't host shows, but you're saying there is a safe way to do it and a safe way to bring people together, correct?
I believe that to be true. That Jim Digby, the human being, says that I look out across the field of everything I read online every day, and people are doing events. People are having some success. Just the other day in Spain, they ran a test, or they released the results of a test with 5,000 close together people who were all rapid tested going into the event first. And so far, the news is, is possibly okay. I don't think we're at a place where full capacity is the best option right now. In fact, I know we're not, but there are some who may give that a try. I just don't want us to be creating more harm than good at this point. I get that we're all crushed. We're all pandemically employed. and we need to get back to work for our soul, our pocketbook, our family sanity, whatever it may be. But we got to do it cautiously, I think.
Okay, so let's talk about vaccinations. It's becoming a thing. A lot of people I know are getting vaccinated. So moving back to touring and when we're doing live shows, someone even just asked in the crew, what should be the process? Should we be testing before or after every show? Should we be testing once a week? Should we allow unvaccinated people on the road? What's the proper protocol? What should we be doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let's talk about it from a risk mitigation standpoint. Vaccines seem to be proving out to be really great. And that, one of the hardest hurdles we're going to have to climb as an ecosystem is how do we get the artist to feel comfortable to leave their home and go on tour? I don't think we're going to have any problem getting audiences inspired. I think they all want to be there. We know that the crew will go where there is work. But how do we get the artists? So I put myself in an artist's brain, which is one of the jobs of the tour manager. What would it take to get a very low risk threshold artist to leave his home or her home? My belief is that that's likely going to be everybody on the team needs to be vaccinated, and that the bubble from tour bus to stage is very clear of other possible interceptions where a virus might be transmitted.
Let's talk about that bubble you're talking about real quick, because I think some people may be not understand what you're talking about. A bubble. Are you talking about the crowd never breaching the backstage? Are you talking about people in the backstage area never seeing others? What do you mean by bubble?
I think in this instance, what's going on in my head as the words come out of my mouth is an artist having a quarantined walk from the bus to the stage, right? Would an artist loiter in a dressing room? Probably not yet, right? Even if everybody was vaccinated, their risk threshold is fairly low by and large, and many that I know wouldn't go into a dressing room. So they've got to move from the bus to the stage in this bubble where no one sees them. Now, how do we create that bubble on the audience facing side? What do we do to protect them on the audience facing side? Well, for now, people are focusing on outdoor shows, and I think that's fairly smart. That's obviously the most smart thing to do. Indoor versus outdoor airflow, risk of aerosolized droplets getting onto the artist or the crew or anyone else. You're safer outside. The CDC says 6 feet for 15 minutes exposure with a mask on is the threshold of too much. So I think audiences are wearing masks still at this point in time. I think crews are wearing masks, and I think only on stage are there no masks because it's necessary to perform. And there's probably a line in the sand that's further back than normal between the artist and the audience to just add that extra safety barrier. There isn't any guiding principle yet, right? We're still untangling the science around COVID. Every human being is created differently, so every artist is going to have a different risk threshold. And could we do shows right now? Sure. If we enact all these safety measures and we get to maybe 50% attendance, I don't know what that number is. It's going to be different with every municipality. Outdoor shows, why not? Let's give it a try.
Yeah. So, you're talking about the economic model a few minutes ago. People are going to be returning to shows, but artists are not going to make as much money because there's not as many tickets sold and it still costs money to tour. So tour managers and a lot of people in this webinar, they're going to probably be in conversations about how to kind of make more money or how to sell more tickets or how to sell the most possible tickets. One thing in the past that sold a lot of tickets and that's made more money for artists has been VIP events. Have you seen any VIP events happening? Have you seen any new things happening in the live space yet?
I have not. And I would imagine that for the moment, those VIP kind of offerings may have to be virtual. Yeah, I realized that I didn't get to the question about vaccine, which was the premise for the last one. I apologize. I believe personally, not Jim Digby ESA, but Jim Digby thinks the vaccine is our next threshold to getting back to work. Does everybody vaccinated get to 100% capacity? I don't know. But what are we going to do for those folks who are, for whatever reason, unwilling to take the vaccine? Are we going to say, no, you can't work? Are we going to say, no, you can't come to the show? What's our solution for them? And is that antigen testing? Well, some of this antigen testing, I forget the metric, 67% effective, maybe. The nose swab, same thing. The temperature taking is more or less, COVID theater. It's not really a safe mechanism, because the science demonstrates that long before you get to 100.3, which is this baseline for concern, you're possibly already infected. That your body has minimal, minute temperature increments. They trend towards 103. Some people never get to 100.3, but this trending from whatever your baseline is, my baseline is 97.3. So if I trend away from 97.3 towards 99, that's a fairly good indication that I've got something going wrong in my system, or something under attack in my system. So how do we get to those who don't want to be vaccinated or haven't yet been vaccinated? That's a tough one, because the tests that we're administering now currently aren't necessarily fully effective enough to say this environment is safe.
Have you talked to anyone in, government about, what that looks like requiring a vaccination card? I heard, and you probably know more about this than I do, but I believe in Israel, they have some kind of like card that you put in your like Apple wallet or something. Have you heard any kind of talks about technology?
Uh, I'm getting frequent technology calls. Um, And, look, some are good ideas, but I don't think ESA gets behind any of them until we know for a fact that they're functional. There's a comment in the chat about, how do we draw this dividing line? It's a big problem, and I don't know. I don't have that answer.
Mhm.
But we, as humans, as empathetic humans, have to recognize that there can't be a vaccination card as the only solution. There has to be a secondary solution, because there are some who won't take it. Do I think we're heading for some kind of vaccine passport? You bet your button. We are, for sure. And is that going to go well everywhere? Nope. But I do know that, people are counterfeiting their vaccine. These paper
Mm.
vaccine cards right now are being counterfeited. So there's going to have to be something at a higher level. I don't know if that's federally implemented or what, but we're gonna end up there with some kind of vaccine verification record, and I don't know how we do without it, frankly.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the touring side. Let's talk about the other side of the show, the venue side. We've got venue production managers. We've got people hosting the events, if you will. What are some things they can do to kind of help as they're doing live shows this summer, to kind of help bring down the risk of having a super spreader event?
Well, in my neighborhood in Philly, outside of Philly, or in Philly, the arena, the Wells Fargo Center, recently announced, maybe 4 weeks ago, that they had implemented a protocol. The name escapes me. That's basically the Good Housekeeping seal of approval for venues, and it was a series of actions that they took, and I'm going to not be able to list them all, but principally they improved their air handling systems. They had the capital to do that, so they revamped their air handling systems to meet the protocols of the CDC. They retrained their staff to identify high touch surfaces and treat high touch surfaces and keep people separated. How to confront somebody not wearing a mask. So they took these very doable steps to make the venue a safer environment, and then got listed as this, with this Good Housekeeping seal. Daggone, I can't remember what it was called. But so that's step one. So this venue fell into a protocol that says their protocols are up to the pathogen mitigation standards, right? So they're able to say to their ticket buying public, be for whatever type of event, that they're following the best rules that we currently know. I think that's a good first step. And where if you're an independent venue and you can't afford to upgrade your air conditioning systems, well, how fast can you move the air through your venue? What can you do? And I would also caution that there's a lot of people out there selling a lot of stuff under the guise of this fixes your COVID problem. And I don't know that any one thing that I've seen out there it does that. Otherwise, we'd all be shouting about it from the rafters. And I would urge caution for people to buy into these folks until they've done their homework and can confirm it against things like the CDC before they invest what little money they have left to get their venue open.
So you've seen, people on airplanes with crazy policies, removing people from the airplane if they're not wearing a mask. Should it be the same in the venue? Is venue security going to need to tighten up on people wearing masks?
I think compliance is going to be mandatory for the near future. Compliance should be an element of your contract at this point in time. I mean, if we're talking about those of us who work backstage, listen, here are the rules of your employment. And mask wearing is one of those rules. Hand washing, one of those rules. Getting the test, some kind of a test, one of those rules. And if you don't do those things, I'm afraid you can't stay here. Unfortunately, I fear it's going to have to be like that for us in the bubble, on those of us containing ourselves around the event, be that artist or whatever. For the audience side, I'm afraid it's got to be the same for now until we know that we've at least got this thing under control and we're not causing worse problems by holding events. Otherwise, we put the whole industry at risk, right? If you're lax on the idea of mask wearing, and you show up and do an event where you poo-poo the whole idea of safety, perhaps you're going to take the industry back down the tubes.
So there's been a few tours that I've heard of, that I've seen, that are actual routed tours. Have you heard any reports of things that they did that were successful, and maybe something that we'll continue to do moving forward that maybe we didn't do in the past?
I don't have any firsthand knowledge from those tours. I did watch one of your webinars the other day and heard you talking about that, and you didn't mention the artist, so I wasn't able to do any homework on it. I do know that there are good, conscious, reasoned people out there who work in our business who are trying to do shows, no matter what they are, in a conscientious manner so they don't cause harm. That's what we need as we slow roll this, walk ourselves back into work.
All right. So we've talked a lot about COVID. Thank you for kind of sharing all that.
Yeah, I'm sorry it's not too detailed. It's a moving target, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's one thing our industry is good at doing, is working with a moving target. We're always changing. So this will continue to change, but also I think everyone's just like chomping at the bit, ready to get to work.
Yeah. Well, I will echo this. The CDC just released an updated version of the gathering guidance, the large gathering guidance. I'll try to put the link in the chat if I can do that without being disruptive. There is the Event Safety Alliance reopening guidance, and there are most of these operators are creating their own reopening guidance. If we can all agree to follow the rules and follow the science until we can get out of this storm, I think we can continue to walk back. So that would be my plea to your audience for sure.
Yeah. I just saw in the chat, Tammy, thanks for that question, Tammy. She goes, in our riders, can we ask for masks to be worn, or can we ask for staff COVID compliance officers in our riders? You think we'll see more of that on the road?
To answer the question directly, it's funny. Our vice president and attorney, Steve Edelman, just answered this question for someone else. And the basic premise was, yes, as a condition of employment, you can make requests for anything, more or less, anything within the law. And the way he posed it back was, does it make sense for you to do that? For instance, if your condition for employment is the vaccine, if the vaccine is not available to everyone, is it fair to condition your employment on the vaccine? Likely answer, no. Mask wearing as a condition of employment is something that can be done, and there's no good excuse not to. I don't know about your audience, but I lived in Japan for a year. I travel to Asia all the time, and mask wearing is a condition of life. Mm-hmm. They do it out of respect for each other. One person feels sick, they put on a mask. It's beyond me why it's a big deal that we can't put masks on right now, but that's a different story altogether. To answer the question, yes, you can make it a condition of employment, and yes, you can ask somebody to step away if they're not doing it.
That's good to know. All right, so let's move away from COVID, because you're what you do. COVID is a blip that's become a bigger blip this year, but what you do is so much bigger than that. Um, let's just talk about when you walk into a show. What are some things, some risky things that you continually see that we're not thinking about?
Yeah, the way you pose the question, I think, was where do you see the most potential for high risk?
Mm-hmm.
And I had framed a clever answer for you to say all of these risks that you had mentioned, weather, fire, shooter, COVID, are high risks, and that perhaps what you meant was high likelihood.
Mm.
Um, so, from a risk management and mitigation perspective, we're duty bound in our duty of care as the leaders for the thing. We're duty bound to foresee those things that could go wrong and create a risk mitigation strategy for them. So, what does that mean? If I'm doing an outdoor event, I don't care if it's Arizona or elsewhere. If I'm doing an outdoor event, I have to create a risk mitigation strategy for weather. I'm duty bound to do so. It is no longer excusable to say, "Oh, that was a freak storm that came out of nowhere." There's no such thing, but it still gets used time and time again in the press. So, as a leader, either you or your safety person, if you're lucky enough to have one, has to demonstrate that there is a plan for when bad weather occurs. And that plan is as complex as the thing that you are bringing to light. What is in your duty of care? As a touring production person, my duty of care is everything that's in the trucks and all the humans that are in the buses.
Mhm.
So I have to strategize around risk for all of those things. The venue, however, or the promoter, depending on how it's sliced up, has the duty of care for the audience and the building itself, the structure, if you didn't build it, and the food and beverage and those elements. So they need to strategize around their duty of care for risks, foodborne outbreak of something, salmonella, or the electronics, the power goes out and we can't get people into the building. Those responsibilities to write a risk mitigation strategy are on the building. The best of the best of us who are preparing for risk are sharing those plans. So if I'm going to do an outdoor show at the Indiana State Fair now, I'm going to make sure that weeks in advance, I'm going to share my plan for my show with the Indiana State Fair that says these are the things I'm going to do in the event of 30-mile-an-hour winds, 40-mile-an-hour winds, heavy rain, hail of half inch, hail of 1 inch, lightning within 20 miles, lightning within 8 miles, tornado, hurricane, etc. And then the Indiana State Fair is going to say to me, "That's great. Here's our plan. Here's what we're going to do at these data points." And those two plans then get agreed on the sunny day before I land there on the ground, so that when we're doing our show, there are no subjective decisions, or there are minimal subjective decisions. That if we hit a trigger point in our weather action plan, we're going to take action Y, and this is how it's going to be communicated to folks, and this is what every department is going to do.
Right. You've decided ahead of time, so you don't have to make that decision when the craziness is going on. You've already agreed. You've already decided.
That's right. That's right. So how do we get to that strategy if we're talking only to tour managers for a minute, production managers? I'm going to take a show on the road. It's 4 trucks of stuff. 2 of those trucks are going to go in the air. The engineering tolerances for those things that are going in the air have to be calculated by someone who knows how much wind can it take, how fast will it go up and go down, what interference does it have with another element in my show, and should that thing go to the roof in a storm circumstance, or should it come to the ground? Should it get tied off to the scaffolding? Whatever those circumstances are unique to your event. There is no one size fits all. There are guiding principles, but not one size fits all. So before I head out on the road, I've identified what my risks are for weather with respect to outdoor shows. I've had an engineer come in and say, "Yep, these are the things we recommend." And I take those things, I put them into a weather action plan where each department knows what their moves are and when they get notified and how they get notified. And then that gets hung on the wall every day. And when there's No threat of severe weather. It's a green piece of paper that says today's going to be a good day. When there's a medium risk for severe weather, we go around, we remind everybody this is the plan. And when it's a high risk for severe weather, we talk through that plan in a stand-up meeting at the top of the day. We talk through that plan when the storm's a couple of hours out over the horizon. We get our meteorologists on the phone. We ensure that the data we're getting is good. And then we prepare to enact our plan. When do you enact that plan? Well, do you have to evacuate the audience? Yes. How long does it take to evacuate the audience? Well, I don't know. That's a venue concern. The venue should be timing every audience exit every night. How long does it take for the audience to exit on a normal night? That's a good metric. If you baseline it there, you'll be okay on an emergency exit, because emergency exits aren't necessarily faster. How long does it take to get the audience out of my building tonight with a symphony and most of my audience over 60? How long does it take to get the audience out of the building with a kids bop show with most of my audience under 12? And where are their parents? So all of these calculations, all of those data points need to be graphed somewhere on the venue side, so the venue knows how long it takes to do an evacuation or what the baselines are for those things. And then you back that number into when do we need to make the call?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you back that number into when we make the call, how much stuff has to be done before we're safe? And then don't forget to turn the power off, last man out, right? So it's complicated.
Okay, as we're going back into festival season, we're not only, a lot of times we feel like we have to take care of gear on stage. We got to protect the gear. We got to be on stage, figuring out all the stuff. Is that something we need to stop worrying about so much? Or how do we adapt that plan to like a stage when you've got winds blowing in, you've got water, going over top of everything?
You know what money can't buy? Human life. Right? To me, it's that simple. And I know that there have been these contentious discussions around, we got to get our guarantee. Insurance isn't going to kick in until we do this. Come on, it's just a storm. It's going to blow over. We hear these things all the time. But what you can't buy is human life. So who are you? Are you the person that cares more about getting that show on and that piece of equipment getting wet? Or are you the person that's going to make sure that that kid out in the audience who's come to see his favorite artist of all time is going to go home in one piece? I think we were a culture of cowboys, right? We were a culture of the show must go on no matter what. This is what we're going to do. Yee-haw, here we go. And that was fun. We can't be that anymore. And I don't think that takes away from the fun of the work that we do. God, our work is amazing. It's the best work on the planet. But we got to make sure that everybody goes home. That's job one.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with more craziness happening in the world, my mind goes to not just weather, but also shooters. And that is an actual conversation that we unfortunately have to have. What should we be thinking about with the possibility of an active shooter and a plan to put in place?
I'm going to come to that, but to tail out of weather, you timed this just right. The Event Safety Alliance Severe Weather Summit begins in April and goes for 4 weeks across April, 1 day a week. And normally we host that in Norman, Oklahoma at the Severe Storm Prediction Center so that you get to see all the cool toys. Now we're doing it virtually for obvious reasons. And I would highly recommend to venue types and touring types, this is a really good training. It teaches you that this is not a weather device. It teaches you where to get actionable weather data from. It teaches you why you're not a meteorologist, which I thought I was, but guess what? I'm not. So I highly encourage folks to sign up for that weather class. It's one of the best things the ESA is giving back to the industry. I'll land that plane. Active shooters. So the ESA was born out of the Indiana State Fair stage collapse. We were pretty good at addressing that problem. And as it turns out, if the Thornton Tomasetti report tells us about there were structural failures, inadequacies. There were leadership inadequacies. There were weather, forecasting and data transference inaccuracies. And all of that to me boils down to that's fixable. And those are things that are reasonably foreseeable. An active shooter, not necessarily reasonably foreseeable. When Christina Grimmie got shot at a meet and greet, and then the Pulse nightclub happened, and then Bataclan happened, and then Manchester happened, and then Vegas happened. With each of those unbelievably awful moments, the ESA grew its scope, grew its subject matter experts, and tried to rein in what can we help it teach the industry about these moments. Well, fact is, those active shooter moments, sadly, are catastrophic and headline grabbing. And they're also what we refer to as black swan moments, because they only happen with, well, everywhere in the world, they happen with less frequency than they do here. And they are not the things that threaten us most, but we do need to prepare for them now because it is reasonably foreseeable. We've seen it happen before. We now know it could happen again. What do we do about that? Well, active shooter training. That's great. Active shooter training means run, hide, fight. Well, those things are cool. And it's important to have those things. But what none of us know, unless we're, someone who's been in the armed services, none of us know how we're going to react to that. Cut, cut, cut. We just don't. Mm-hmm. So activating what's called the reticular activation system in the brain and giving us the knowledge that that sound means run. Great. Where do we run to? Every day's a different venue. How do I know where that exit is? Do I have 2 other exit ways out? This is all part of the leader's planning and this risk mitigation planning. So you're, every day, hopefully you're lucky enough to have a security person with you. If not, then it's perhaps on you. You've got to create an emergency egress plan for that particular venue. You've got to look around and see where are these safe spaces? Where's the bad person going to come from? Front, back, left, right? What happens when they come from left? Do I have a way out? Again, the equation is different for every venue. The data points are different for every venue. Do we now need to think of those things and plan for those things and kind of distribute information about what to do if there's a super bad thing happening today? Unfortunately, yes, we do. And it can happen anywhere, in any venue, in a church, in a school, in an elementary school, in a shopping mall, in a grocery store. It can happen everywhere. So the best thing we as individuals can do is continue to increase our situational awareness. It's sad to think of it, but we have to think about what's my other way out of this room? What am I going to do? I don't want to walk into every restaurant I go to and think about that, but I do now. So self-preservation is number one. Team preservation also number one. You as the leader, your team's going to expect you to have identified a rally point and a secondary rally point, because what if the bad thing's happening at your rally point? Is it the bus? Again, each situation is different. The best thing we can do for each other is to continue to remind each other every day when we're on the floor, hey, where's your second way out? Hate to have you thinking about this.
In a team meeting every day? Because you can think about it as the leader, but how are you getting that info to your team? Are you putting it on a piece of paper? You just stand-up meeting? Like, what's the... I'm
a big proponent of toolbox talks every day. And especially now, because there's so much to consider in the new now. We gotta as leaders be thinking about empathy and compassion, and we got to be making a lot of room for people to be rusty and shaking the rust off, and we got to be compassionate to that. And we got to, does the forklift driver remember to look over his shoulder before he or she starts backing up? Does the truck driver remember how to back up to the dock? There's all these things that are now at an elevated risk for at least the foreseeable future until we can dust off the rust and get our muscle memory back. So I think now's a really good time to be talking about toolbox talks. There are protocols for toolbox talks that work. Read the book. No, shucks, I just quoted it earlier today. Atul Gawande. I'll think of it. Anyhow, there's a reference for where those toolbox talks come from. And the idea is it's 7 or fewer talking points, and they happen in 3 or fewer minutes. And it's your opportunity, both locally facing and tour crew facing, to say, hey, okay, here's the circumstances today. From a job hazard perspective to the stagehands, from a job hazard perspective, we have these 2 moments that happen during the day. 1, the rig goes up in the air, super high risk, don't be underneath it. 2, there's this pyro test that we do later in the day. We'll let you know. You'll be seeing our yellow flashing light. We'll remind you to get out. But I want you to know we value you and we care about your safety. We hope you look out for us too, especially during these rusty times. Oh, and by the way, I also know that our heads need Band-Aids sometimes too. And if you're not feeling quite fit, if you're having a little mental health concern, that's all right also. And we would like to offer you an opportunity to take a pause if you need to take a pause. If you need help, we've got somebody who you can talk to about that. Engage with all of those in your ecosystem, in your duty of care,
Mhm.
including the stagehands, including the runners, including the caterers. Show everyone that you value them as humans, and get this kind of collective, let's look out for each other thing going first thing in the morning.
Mhm.
Uh, Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, Jim, what you're saying is so important, and I think we haven't heard a lot of people say stuff like that in the past. As a leader on the road, you have so much influence over your tour. You have so much good that you can do for people on the road. And a lot of people don't realize that. We're not taught that. A lot of us enter this job because we're a buddy of the artist, or we just start rolling a cable, and all of a sudden we get a job. So thank you for saying those things. I think it's really important. And it segues perfectly into what you're doing with showmakers. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys are trying to help um, educate people, how you're trying to, give mental I guess help on the road to those to people on the road?
Well, let me start by giving a shout out to the behind the scenes charity. Um, Many of you may not know, but I worked with Lincoln Park for almost the entirety of their career. And when Chester died by suicide, that hit home. That was very close to me. He's someone I considered a friend, and he's someone that I rode the roller coaster with him every day, as did so many people on the team, to just make sure that we were all okay. So for the end result to come in that way, was a kick to the gut, and talk about ripping open scar tissue. So then there was a couple of other sequences of events that happened right on the heels of that. We were lucky enough to be working for an organization that offered us group counseling to work through it. We were able to talk to each other. But here I was sitting amongst the team that I'd had on the road for almost a decade, and the group counseling was leading us through these discussions. And we were finding out that members of the team were suffering from mental health issues as well, in an environment where I thought we would have already known that. And surprisingly, we didn't. So it made me realize in self-exploration that I had not set up this workspace as as safe as I thought I had, because there were these things that weren't publicly known. Now, that's not to say everybody wears their thing on their sleeves. That's not what I'm saying. But I thought that I had built a very safe workspace in that regard. Now, mind you, I've had my share of foul ups as well, right?
We all have.
Yeah, yeah, and they've been pretty big in some cases. But I continue to try to improve. I continue to try to professionally develop and self-explore. Anyway, I found myself taking the mental health first aid training in 2018 or 19, and it was earth-shattering to me. There was a pre-test going into the class that asked, I think, something along the lines of 20 questions. I got 2 of them right, because everything I thought I knew about mental health and addressing someone with that concern was completely wrong, completely backwards, which was like a huge slap in the face to me, because I thought I was well read. No, just as dumb. So and there was a couple of moments in the class where we were being taught these very kind of awakening things about what voices in the head means to someone with mental health issues. Because I always guffawed at voices in the head. That's, I hear that when I talk to myself in the shower. That's a voice in the head. Well, nah, we're not all manufactured the same. And the biggest takeaway for me in that was that it stripped my ego away with respect to thinking that I knew how other people were thinking, or that I could apply my values to other people on the team. What an asshole I was, pardon my French. That's not my place to do. And it started this journey of, oh man, I got to listen more deeply. So I read this book, thanks to the manager of Lincoln Park, Nonviolent Compassionate Communication, from Marshall Rosenberg. And it was a game changer. It taught me that I was not listening as a leader. And it opened my eyes to, to see things that can cause that people are under duress, or that people are not really expressing what they fully feel, or at all what they feel. I had to learn to listen. And that started this awakening journey of becoming a better leader, and leading sympathetically, and leading as a servant leader, and leading as an authentic leader. Things that I thought I was doing were not that. And I can't wait to explore this new found belief system in what leadership should be. I lost your original question. I'm sorry. I
Well,
told you I
also,
rambled
you're
on.
talking about leadership, and I just want to let it be known that just because you're not the tour manager, just because you're not the production manager does not mean you can't be a leader on the road. It does not mean you can't
That's right.
care for others on your left, on your right. You can be a leader. No matter if you're the lowest person on the totem pole on the tour, you can be a leader, and it's all about a mentality and how you care for others.
That's right. And I also during this downtime took some time to learn new things, and I learned that leadership and management are two different things. At my age, I've been treating them both as the same and doing the job overall only half well, because I realize that I excel at leadership and I suck at management. So learning to let go of being the manager and find someone who's really good at that to support my leadership is this other kind of self-discovery thing. And they really are two different things. So I'll land that plane. You asked about Showmakers. Showmakers is intended to pick up the smart thinking and learning that leaves off outside of safety. Event Safety Alliance was formed as a nonprofit to talk about the safety conversation and has guardrails on it, that's where the conversation stays. But there's a lot more stuff we need to learn, right?
Yeah.
There is this servant leadership, there is this empathy, there is diversity, equity, and inclusion, there is mental health awareness, there is anti-harassment. There are so many things that we should be asking of ourselves and asking of our leaders, and that the artists and managers should be valuing in the people they hire that we don't know yet. There are no professional designations. There is no pathway to this education to get to be that person. And one of the things we hope to do with Showmakers is create a pathway like that.
So how do people get involved? How do people learn more? Is it just a resource? Is it a membership?
It's not a membership. It's a nonprofit. There's no pay to play. There's none of that at the moment. At the moment, we're amplifying the good work of everybody else who's trying to do something that they've discovered during COVID. They have a passion to do. On the website, showmakers.com, you'll find a sign up, get involved page. We're still figuring out who we are and how we can best serve the industry. We're working with NAM, we're working with the CMA, we're working with the Music Educators Association. We're doing everything we can to try to discover how we can influence the change that we want to see.
Yeah, that's great, Jim. Well, okay. One last thing. You've seen a lot of stuff. You've seen a lot of gnarly stuff on the road, I'm sure, with all your artists. Can you leave us with one piece of wisdom? Maybe one no to never do in live events, or just maybe leave us with one piece of encouragement.
Well, the no for me has always been don't be late. I feel like if I'm going to hold true to the things I've spewed out here today, I'm going to be a little bit more lenient. There's not going to be a whole lot of oil spots. I've done that, unfortunately, in the past, and I've made my point, but to what end did it, what did it cost me to make that point and create an oil spot? It was an awful thing for me to do. I recognize that now. But at the time, that's how we taught each other. That's how we said, don't ever be late again. Y'all, I won't be there for you. And we left a person behind. What were we thinking? So that's not where we are anymore. And I would say rather than spew no-nos, let's spew yeses. Let's talk about what those things are we should do and we can do that are easy, that don't cost anything. Like, hey, I'm here for you if you need help. I understand we're rusty. What should we do? All of us should go back to work thinking about the trauma that we've just been through for the last 15 to 24 months, depending on who you ask. And remember that trauma leads to probably a PTSD-like syndrome in most of us, because we've lost our identity, we've lost our livelihood, we've lost our money. In some cases, we've lost our house. In some cases, we haven't been able to feed each other. In some cases, we're sleeping in cars. It makes me sick to my stomach that the people I know and love in this business, and even the ones I don't personally know, are going through those things. And how can we never, ever let that happen again?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have those answers, but that's a fight worth fighting.
That's great, man. Jim, I think you're awesome. I think you're a great leader. And I think that you have such a passion for the community, the touring community, and it really shows. I want to open it up. I don't want to go too much longer, but I wanted to open it up for just a couple of questions. I know we answered a couple live on the fly. Jesse, feel free to join us here.
I saw one in the very beginning. Yes, John Taffer, that guy, was my manager at that nightclub when the lighting fixture fell from the
Oh,
ceiling.
wow. That's the bar. That's Bar Rescue, right?
That guy. Yep. He was the manager.
Wait, so he was, I mean, he seems pretty wild on that show.
Professional manager. He was the first guy I ever worked for. Yeah, that'll tell you everything you need to know about me.
Did he make you a great drink?
No. I was 19. That was underage.
Oh, true.
I think a couple of questions or comments have come in surrounding the costs that are coming in with all of the new COVID compliance things that we're going to have to abide by. So I don't know if you guys want to chat for a second about how you think that's going to affect. Is that going to be on the artist, on the promoter, on the venue? I mean, in short, I think it's all of the above. But
Jesse, we're all paying the price, right? And I think we've heard from different managers what their threshold for return is for their artist. I know one manager who said very prominently, no, none of my artists are going back to work until the shows are sold out, right? That's one approach. I would like to think that we're going to find artists and managers who recognize that the entire ecosystem has a value to them and that they'll go back to work with the mindset of how can we bring the ecosystem back to life? I mean, we really have to do CPR on our entire community. And unfortunately, one of the best blessings about our business is you can be anybody you want to be, look, feel, act, behave any way you want to be, and you'll find a home here in the event business, right? The challenge with that is there is no one way out of this problem. And some artists are going to cause the venues to pay the price. Some venues are going to cause the artists to pay the price. At the end of the day, it's the humans who are going to have to pay the price, whether we know it or not.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the questions that we've had so far. I don't know if anyone has one last one they want to pop into the chat.
We bored the shit out of everybody, didn't we?
We just really got them there.
Well, no, it's a lot of great information. And I just want to, shed light one more time on being a leader. And you said that so eloquently, it can be anyone. Anyone can be a leader, and it's simply just taking care of one another. And that's where I think we have to really, what we haven't done in the past is take care of one another and really look after one another on the road. And I think that's so important moving forward.
Well, it is. It's everything. It really is. I mean, a dear friend, Steve Arch, who passed a few years ago, an English rigger, man, he was great. And he said in an interview, it's about the people. And if it wasn't for the people, I wouldn't do it. And for me, part of the life's journey, part of the story we didn't tell today was, I got, one of the reasons I ended up here was I was able to construct a family circumstance that fulfilled a void for me because of my real life family. Not that things were awful, but it wasn't what it could have been. So for me, it's all about the family and it's all about the people. And a lot of people making decisions about our business don't value human first. They value dollar first. And I don't know how we fix that. I really don't, except keep on talking about it.
Yeah. The honest conversation is becoming super meaningful. Thank you again, Jim, for joining us. I'm going to share my, wait.
Sorry. I thought of the book, Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, Gwande, Checklist Manifesto. It'll tell you, it'll teach you about the value in talking through how the day is going to be in 3 minutes or less. Sorry to interrupt you, Riley.
And that's to talk about, that's our standing meeting, our toolbox meeting that you called it, correct?
It'll frame the science behind the toolbox talk and why the science behind the toolbox talk has such great value. And don't forget about the behind the scenes charity and mental health first aid. Holy cow, it's a game changer.
That's awesome. I'm going to send out a replay of this so people can watch it if they only caught part of it, but I'm going to put links to all this stuff in the email that you'll get tomorrow. Jim, thanks again. I'm going to share my screen real quick. We talked about the crazy risk that tour managers are helping avoid. This job, it can seem daunting. It can seem tough at times. Our How to Be a Tour Manager course, you're going to learn exactly what it takes to be a successful tour manager, to run a successful tour. Our goal is to help you gain the knowledge and the tools and the confidence to actually be able to go out on the road and do the job. Paired with the Event Safety Alliance and their book that Jim's been talking about, we believe you're going to be able to actually go out and make a difference on the road. Some people have taken this course and they are already getting new jobs. I talked to someone yesterday who's on the road. I talked about this last week. He started as a backline tech, the lowest person on the totem pole, pushing cases, just trying to get out on the road. And the manager saw his initiative and gave him a shot. And well, he nailed it. And so now he's managing tours. He's managing shows right now as we speak, doing little one-offs on the road. And I know he's stoked. And we're really excited when things like that happen for our students. If that interests you, we'd love to meet you. We'd love to talk to you and see if this course would make sense for you. You can purchase it on our website, or you can just go to tourcollective.co/call. Like I said, we'd love to meet you. And we just released a payment plan. A lot of people reached out asking for a payment plan, and we didn't have that for our new online course. And this course is on demand, kind of like Netflix. But love to meet you again. And to get that payment plan, you can just schedule a call with us, tourcollective.co/call. Thanks so much for joining in all 4 weeks. We've had some amazing guests. We've had a lot of great teaching and a lot of great questions. We've had over 200 people tune in from 12 different countries, and just a lot of people who are doing great things in the touring community. Once again, you're going to get a replay tomorrow in your email, and hopefully we'll do this again. If you love to hear about a certain topic on the road, whether it be tour managing, production managing, audio engineering, or something, please let us know. You can always find me at riley@tourcollective.co. Awesome. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for joining in. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Jim.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.